there, or anybody here. Hey, how are y'all today? You doing well? My name is Rob Burris, and I'm the Dean of the Cameron School of Business. And we are thrilled to be having Business Week. You know, a couple of years, we didn't have Business Week. And so last year we cranked it back up, and this year is our second post-COVID year of having Business Week, and we're really thrilled about that. Couple of announcements, just a couple. First, y'all look great. I guess you got the dean's email that said, you know, try to do business. If you didn't wear business casual, that's fine, but you look really nice in the hallways in business casual, so thanks for that. Second, right after this, we're going to be having, I know that they tell you there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? But there is a free lunch right out back underneath the tent. And so please join us for that. You don't have to go anywhere, just show up and have lunch. I'm not even quite sure what we're having today, but usually it's pretty good stuff when my staff picks it out. Not when I pick it out, but when they do. And mentioning our staff, they have done a really good job with this event. And so we've got Amy Orman is in the back. We've got Drew Rosen. Dr. Rosen is running around as the coordinator for Business Week. We've got Donna Kurtz and Jenny Bingham. And all the folks, Donnie, just wave to the crowd. There you go. There's Donnie, who actually happens to be a current student here, but works in the dean's office. So they've done a really tremendous job of really preparing this for you. So don't forget the lunch. Have a great time. Go to as many sessions as you possibly can. And now I get the great privilege of introducing our speaker today. I want to note to you that Live Oak Bank for many, many years has been our corporate sponsor. And so let's give Live Oak Bank our big, huge round of applause along with the people that made this all happen. That was for you, Stephanie, because you're our speaker. So Stephanie Mann is our speaker today. You can read about her. She's the Chief Strategy Officer at Live Oak Bank. And so we really appreciate having you here. Thanks for joining us. And just a little bit about her background before we just really hand it over to her. She's a former managing director of investment banking at Citi, where she's done I messed up right before. I said this was 125 million of mergers and acquisitions, right? She said, no, it's 125 billion dollars of mergers and acquisitions. So I stand corrected on my slip up there. So that is a whole heck of a lot of work that she's done on Wall Street. And now she is here at Live Oak Bank and willing to speak to you about some of her experiences. She currently serves as you can tell, the Chief Strategy Officer at Live Oak Bank, where she's responsible for corporate strategy, development, and strategic investments, including Live Oak Ventures and Live Oak Private Wealth. She has more than 20 years of experience in advising companies on capital structure, growth strategy, M&A, and capital raising. So thank you for being with us, and let's give her a round of applause.
All right. So we forgot to mention no free lunch if you don't laugh at my pretty bad jokes today. So. Excellent. Free lunch down in front. See, he's a quick learner. So thank you so much for having me here today. And it's really an honor to be able to spend this time with you all. I did some homework and asked some folks, you know, what do people want to hear about when I talk today? Two themes came up. One, talk a lot about what you wish you would have known when you were a student, and talk about the twists and turns in your career. So the good news is I have a lot to say about both of those. That's code for it. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, plenty of twists and turns, and plenty of things I wish I'd known earlier. So hopefully it'll be interesting, if not entertaining or educational along the way. So first, a little bit about me. So I don't want to take full credit for it. but important to note, I graduated college in 1996. The S&P is up 5-fold since then. So that happened. I grew up on the West Coast in a small beach town called Santa Cruz, which actually reminds me a lot of Wilmington. Swap the banana slugs for the Seahawks, and you basically have Santa Cruz. I went to Stanford for college. I was a biology major, so that's the first clue. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And when I finished school, I went into consulting, which was the second clue. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I worked in consulting for a couple of years. That's when the internet became a thing for the handful of us in this room who remember those days. And life was all about the dot-com boom. And I started my own software company. I worked in biz dev at another software company. That was valued based on a multiple of eyeballs, because that's what you did in the dot-com boom. And then the market all fell apart. And so I did what a lot of people my age did then. We called it B2B, back to business school. And business school for me was something I had been really definitive. I wasn't going to do any form of graduate school until I really knew what I wanted to do after graduate school, because it was going to be expensive and I was going to leave with a boatload of debt. And so I decided that I would go back to my sort of science and math roots and pursue finance, and that I would go into investment banking, do it for a couple of years. And then at the end of that, go back to the West Coast and go work in tech again. So I went east, I went to Wharton, I got my job in investment banking at Citigroup. And then it turned out I was one of the handful of crazies that loved that job. So I stayed in that job for most of my career. I loved how intense it was. I loved the learning. I loved all of the exciting things that I worked on. I worked my butt off for a really long time. I was really tired for like 15 years. I clocked an absurd amount of airline miles. There was one time where I was flying to so many cities within 5 days that when I checked in at the airport, the woman checking me in goes, "Whoa, who did you piss off at work?" Because I wasn't basically sleeping. I was hitting every European city in 5 days. And enjoyed that ride. And then in 2017, luckily, my husband had a job opportunity at PPD. And I had never spent any time in North Carolina, immediately fell in love with Wilmington when he was exploring the opportunity. So we moved to North Carolina. And I started doing my own consulting business for tech-enabled startups. Got introduced to Live Oak Bank, who had a venture capital portfolio, and started doing some work for them, advising companies on capital raising and M&A strategy and things like that. And then came on full-time in 2019, just in time for COVID. So COVID, March 2020, the whole company goes into PPP mode, which is a great quick learning on how banks work. I used that time at home to try to reach the end of Netflix, still working on it. And I spent a ton of time with my 2 kids, who are frequently awesome, but not all the time, and are both currently in middle school. So that gets us up to present. So the theme today is making the most of your journey. And it's a pretty simple idea, right? Show up, put the work in, give it your all, and that's how you make the most out of it. You know, when we were in the middle of the financial crisis at Citigroup, and all we could do was watch our stock price, and chaos was going on all around us. And at some point, our stock price dipped below $1. So everybody was like, what's going to happen in an hour, tomorrow? Is Goldman Sachs going to buy us? Why would they? And one of the folks I worked for, she said, Stephanie, you got to forget what's going on all around you. You got to get the job done. Focus on your clients. Today, you work at an M&A boutique that happens to be on the 36th floor of the Citigroup building. Go focus on your clients and get it done. And I thought that was a really great lesson, just about making your job and making things happen by focusing on the clients and getting the work done. So looking back, I had a pretty easy childhood, nuclear family, really supportive, pretty good at school. My superpower, which I guess I'll reveal early in this conversation, is actually multiple choice tests. Doesn't serve me very well now. Was great up until my early 20s, including the GMAT, but since then, not so useful. So I didn't have a ton of challenge in my childhood, and my first rude awakening was really when I got to Stanford. As my husband said when he read this, he's like, "You're really going to say that like the hardest thing that happened in your life was going to Stanford? That's lame." But it was hard. And the first day of school, the dean welcomed all the freshmen, and in our rude awakening moment said, "Raise your hand if you think you're going to be in the top 10% of the class." And 100% of us raised our hand. We were like, "Oh, this is going to be really hard." And this is mathematically impossible. And so for me, the first, well, pause for a second, tell you a good story. So the only thing that was really hard for me in school before college was actually sports, because I loved them. I was a 3 varsity sport athlete. I did field hockey, track, and volleyball. I loved all of them. I worked my tail off. I was the first person in practice, the last person to leave. And I was unbelievably mediocre. And that was, that was just what I got dealt. And so when I was at college and I missed playing sports, I was like, well, you can't walk on to a D1 volleyball team for a lot of reasons, not to mention that 3 girls on the team were Olympic volleyball players and that their setter was 2 inches taller than I was. So it turned out field hockey was a club team. And so I started playing field hockey, loved every minute of it. Coach applied for D1 status my sophomore year, got D1 status. And that afternoon I was cut from the team. So I was like, "Congratulations, coach." So, lots of good lessons along the way. The other real rude awakening that happened for me was not sports, but I thought I was really hot stuff in math. 800 on my math SATs, all sorts of math nerdy competitions I did. And so I went into the very hardest math class they would allow me to take at Stanford, Math 43 Honors, it was called. Within a week, I was way over my head. I mean, there were lots of freshmen in there that were familiar with the content, and I had no idea what was going on. It was, I was like, "Where are the numbers? Why are these all Greek letters?" Like, it was too advanced for me. Nobody had taught me this stuff, and I never learned how to ask for help. And so I tried to grind it out myself, and fast forward 3 months, I got a C. And it was this devastating experience for me. Next morning, I woke up and became a biology major. And I was just sad. Like, I was sad that I let that happen. I was sad that I didn't, come out the gates doing better. And it stuck with me for a while. So my junior year, I went back to the academic office and said, "Would you guys let me retake Math 43 Honors?" And they said, "Sure." And so fall of my junior year, there I was back in Math 43 Honors. I signed up for 2 sections. So I was going to 1 lecture and 4 section classes a week. The PhD program requires all of the PhD students to tutor undergrads for free. So they gave me the list of tutors. And you can't make this stuff up. And it's one of my favorite parts of this story is that there was actually a guy on the list named David McMath. And I was like, this is so meant to be. And so I called David McMath, and he was a great tutor. He had a very difficult student, and we were victorious. I got my A, and it felt amazing. And so this is leading me to learning number 1, and we'll go through a bunch of these over my time here, but push your limits. Figure out what you can do. It's going to surprise you. Figure out what you can't do. You're going to learn from those mistakes. I had an Orange Theory instructor once say, "Find your limits in the classroom. It's a lot less painful than finding them on the road." And that stuck with me. So push yourself when you can. So I graduated with my bio degree, my slice of humble pie, went into consulting, 1996. So how many of you guys know about the dot-com boom and bust? You guys study that at all? A little bit, see some heads nodding, not that many. It was like, if you lived in the Bay Area at that time, it was great. How many of you have heard of AOL dial-up? Yeah, right? I mean, that's what we were talking about. We had the internet. And so we were going to IPO parties. I had eBay t-shirts, pets.com t-shirts. PayPal gave me 20 bucks to be a beta user. We were like, free money. We all have PayPal now. I got like a beta on the Gmail account. And we would spend every night and every weekend holed up coming up with really great business ideas. And then finally we came up with one. We all quit our jobs to start this company, and we called it Patient Gateway. It was gonna be a software company for scheduling and electronic billing for doctors' offices. We're like, this is an amazing idea. This fixes so many problems for patients, for doctors' offices, everything. We're building code, and it's gonna be great. So to be clear though, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I'd never written a business plan. I'd never run a company. I'd never written code. I'd never sold anything. And we just jumped in and went for it. And that's okay, right? Like that's how you learn some of the times. You're never going to meet a first-time CEO that's been a CEO before. Reed Hastings didn't know how to run Netflix before he ran Netflix. Mark Benioff didn't know how to run Salesforce before he ran Salesforce. Stephanie Mann, because I like the company of those other names, didn't know how to run Patient Gateway before I ran Patient Gateway. But that one had a different result. So turns out that doctors' offices, which we knew, but didn't really know, were all on paper schedules. So not only did they not have internet connections, and we were like, we'll get you free AOL dial-up. They were like, on what computer? We were like, you don't have a computer in here? And so as we went out with our product, it turned out it was a really bad idea. And so we were like, well, who else can use this great scheduling software? And we first tried salons, then we tried restaurants, both goose eggs. I like to say we invented Open Table just 15 years early, but timing's everything. And so off we went. So the next post-business school, the bulk of my career, I spent in investment banking. And I really did enjoy investment banking, just super steep learning curve, really interesting problems to solve, really smart people to work with, really fast-paced environment. I worked on a project with this guy, Stavros Zibiritis, early in my career. And he told me, Stephanie, he had a really thick Greek accent, which I won't try to do, but Stephanie, get up the learning curve as fast as you can, because it's going to be painful either way. And so he just really meant like, you know, dig in, embrace the learning, and get to a place where you can be useful. And he told me that on midnight on a Saturday, which happened to be my birthday, as I was working for the first day on his project, as Carl Icahn launched a hostile takeover of Temple Inland, a paper and packaging company. And you know, he's right. Like I dug in on that case, on advisory, on financial impact, and it's certainly a highlight of my career. So embracing learning takes a lot of different forms. Raise your hand if you've ever worked for someone you didn't like or worked with someone you didn't like. So some of the best advice I got, because there were a lot of people that I would not have wanted to get an after work drink with at Citigroup, but everybody gets where they get for a reason. And you're going to enjoy your job a lot more if you think, what's that reason? What is this person good at? What is there for me to learn from them? Are they really good with clients? Do they analyze problems better? Are they quicker on their feet? Are they better at negotiating? Like, what is it that made this person successful? And what can I get out of this project? And that's the same thing for the work that you're doing. Get as much out of the work that you're doing as you can. Do all parts of the project and raise your hand for more, but really embrace the learning. When I started at Citi, I started out of business school, and all of the most technical work is taught to the analysts out of undergrad. And somebody said, Steph, if you want to be successful at Citi, people can't know that you came out of MBA. They have to be unsure because you're so technical that you could be an analyst promote, but you're so good at leadership that you could be an MBA. And you just got to make sure that they don't know which. And so I had to dig into the technical. And so I would give an assignment to the analyst, and then I'd go back to my desk and try to do the same thing in parallel. And they always were better and faster than I was, until I started getting to a point where I would actually say, all right, ready, go. And I would compete and see how fast I could do it until I got really good enough to be competitive with the analysts. So one, that's a window into me being weirdly competitive, but also, made it so I could check the models faster, do better work, teach better, and all of those things. So just really digging in, doing the hard things and embracing learning was a big part of it. We worked on a high yield bond offering when the markets reopened in 2003 for an energy company, an international energy company. And the audit firm, in order for us to launch the bond offering, needed reports from every domicile where this energy company was. And we were supposed to go live with this deal on the morning of July 5th. It was 2003. And we hadn't heard from Morocco. And I was the most junior person on the team at the time. And so my boss said, Steph, the good news is the view of the fireworks is great from my office. And so I spent that 4th of July in her office, and it was a great view. But I got to learn a ton, and I was the person that was at work when Morocco called. You guys are probably like, this makes no sense, but there weren't cell phones everywhere, I promise. You had to stay in your office to get a call. So my favorite part of investment banking was teaching the analysts, the new class of analysts every year. And everybody would ask me the same question when they started, which was, what do I have to do to be successful here? And this is a line stolen from Shamrocks Lacrosse here in Wilmington. It's on the back of our sons' jerseys, attitude and effort. And it's the most important learning of the half hour, hour-ish I have with you guys. But this is really what it all comes down to, is attitude and effort. What does that mean at work? Well, in investment banking, it meant don't go home until you've checked with everybody if there's something you can do to help. Check your work before you give it to your boss. I developed a pattern. If anybody walked towards my office, I would look out and be like, did you check it? And then 9 out of 10 times, if somebody hadn't worked with me before, they'd be like, no. And they'd go back and check it before it came back. And they'd always find something. The other things, be resourceful. So I would always call people who are a few years ahead of me and say, do you have a sell side pitch that you've used for a tech company before that could be a good model for me? You know what you can't do for a sell side pitch for a good thing is Google it. Like not everything's going to be there. Chat GPT is not going to make me my sell side pitch the way my boss wants me to see it. So be resourceful, right? Outside of the internet, use your friends, use people who've done the job before. Those people are going to be really successful. This is a life lesson I give my kids too. Get an A before you get extra credit. So don't take your time to sign up for the silly research side project, the cool volunteer opportunity, the thing that helps somebody else out. If your work isn't excellent, you've been hired to do a job, and your only thing you can control is the excellence of your work. And that's what I tell my team that every day. We call our team optionality because it's all sort of future facing stuff. But I told them that everything we do is going to be with excellence. And that's all we can control. We will have a reputation for being thoughtful, consistent, proactive, collaborative, and excellent. And we won't take on more than we can do if it compromises that quality of our work. And then the last part of that is get it done. And this is a story about my favorite analyst, Natalia Donde. She was Russian that went to University of Chicago. She graduated with a finance degree from University of Chicago when she was 20. So she couldn't go to the bars drinking with all the other analysts. So she was always hanging out with me in the office. And we were working on a buy side for an auto aftermarket chain. It had a couple hundred locations in the United States. And the sellers put a model in the data room. How many of you guys have built a financial model before? Few. So, Excel spreadsheet, lots of tabs, typical model, 3 to 10. This thing was massive because it was a roll up of 200 locations. And they put a PDF in the data room of the model. Like, how painful is that? So we had to do a model that showed leverage on the business, but we didn't have an actual working model. So good thing at Citigroup, they've got a team of tech people who do just production work. And so we dropped it off on a Friday and they said they would translate it all to Excel for us by Sunday. So Sunday she goes in, holiday weekend, and they say, actually, we made a mistake. We can't give you the Excel file. We made it. We can't give it to you because it's copyrighted. And we don't know you have permission. She was like, we're on a deal. Of course we have permission. They put it in the data room and I took it. And they were like, yeah, but how do we know that? We need to talk to a lawyer. And she was like, well, it's Sunday and the lawyer's not here. And once again, not a lot of cell phones. So the M&A lawyer wasn't available and she was determined to get it. And Citigroup is a massive global company. And so she pulled up the full Citigroup directory, every person who works at Citi, branches, retail, commercial, everything. She searched for New York and lawyers in our internal directory, and she just started at the top calling office numbers until someone picked up. And she got some guy, some random town in upstate New York that worked in commercial banking who happened to be at work on a Sunday. And she was very convincing. So he got on the phone with our production team and she got it done. So it's one of my favorite stories of somebody who really runs through walls to get it done. I mean, there was a lot of exhaustion from that, but we wanted the project results and we couldn't wait another day. When I was up for managing director, well, a couple of years before that, we call it managing director. Some places call it partner. But when before I was up for promotion, this was in 2010 or 11, probably 2011, Citigroup did a bunch of hiring because we did so much downsizing in 2008. And we hired a bunch of managing directors into the M&A group. And I was like, whoa, those are supposed to be my job in a few years. Like, how am I going to get promoted? So I sat down with the head of the investment bank and he said, well, we want to move you into the tech group. And we're going to give you Google and Facebook and Microsoft and Intel and Yahoo and this coveted list of amazing clients. And he's like, and you'll work on those for a couple of years and that'll get you promoted when it's time. And I was living in New Jersey. I had 2 young kids. I was an expert, I'd built this big expertise in M&A deal making. And this was a really different job with clients I'd never called on. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. And I jumped right into it. I was on that morning 6 a.m. flight, Newark to San Francisco every Monday, calling on the clients. And it was a grind, right? Getting people to know me, building new relationships, trying to prove myself internally and just being exhausted doing it all the time. But it made it really great when I got promoted. It was a really exciting time for me in my career. And it felt like all of that work paid off. And so I guess never too old for attitude and effort. So next one, and to be fair, this is probably a sub-bullet of attitude and effort, do the hard things. But it's so important. So naturally, all of us as people, we like to do the things we already know how to do and the things we're good at. And we shy away from things that are unfamiliar and hard and hope somebody else on the team actually can do them or knows how to do them. Just stop doing that, right? Don't procrastinate. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Do the hard things yourself. That's how you learn. That's how you get better. That's how you create more value for yourself in your career. We've been really busy at Live Oak lately. We've been doing a lot of ventures deals. And so I grabbed someone out of fintech partnerships to come help me close an equity investment. How many people have seen a legal agreement for an M&A deal or a venture deal? They're like monster thick, crazy boring. Like if anyone has trouble falling asleep, read a 100-page legal agreement. And we got the final documents, and I said to her, I need you to check these for all the business terms. Here are the business terms we think should be in there, but every line of every page needs to be read. We're looking at the numbers and the details. And I know you don't know how to do this. So do you feel comfortable giving it a go? And she was like, absolutely, sign me up. I love to learn. And she printed out those documents and holed up in her office, stack of paper, notebook, highlighter, pen, old school, rolled up her sleeves. 6 hours later, she was done. Would have taken her like 90 minutes had she done it before. And she just brute force worked through it line at a time and was incredibly valuable and now knows how to do it. And she didn't even wait. She wasn't like, I'll do it after lunch. That's sort of hanging over me as this really painful assignment. She just went for it. And I learned a lot watching that, right? Just to not shy away from it. And then moving to, this is my last lesson, my last learning of the day. I had a college roommate who always used to say this. He thought he was really clever. He would say, Steph, be good and be good. Like, be good, take care of yourself, be healthy, be well, prioritize your health, but be good, right? Do good, be kind, take care of people around you. What does it mean to behave as a good person? So at the core of it, everything in work is about people, right? It's your customers, it's your bosses, it's your colleagues, it's your reports, it's your community around you. We don't talk in the business world that much about what it means to be kind at the workplace. If you Google, and I tried it because I was curious if I could find like a witty quote. If you Google winning and kindness, there's like nothing. It's like, it doesn't exist. It's weird. But I don't know why people don't talk about it more. At Live Oak, it's a really, really big part of our culture to treat people well. We come to work, we assume good intent, that people aren't coming to work to do a bad job. We believe that if we take care of our employees, they'll take care of our customers. And there's this beautiful ripple effect that kindness creates, both on your own team, in your workplace, and then out in the community from that kindness. And so I just want to remind you that that should be, a tenet of yours as you go into the workplace. And then lastly, be humble and try to enjoy it. It's your journey. It's going to have ups, downs, full of surprises. But you guys, it's all going to be unique to you. Nobody's going to have the same one. And it's yours to make the most of. Live Oak Bank is a small business bank. When I talk about working at Live Oak Bank and somebody say, what do you do there? I almost never really even mention the word bank, right? I mean, I'm not like, ooh, I opened a checking account today. Super exciting. Or I'm not saying I'm changing the world one working capital loan at a time. Like, we're not doing that. What we're doing is supporting America's small business. And it's easy to feel a lot of passion for what you do if you connect with the purpose. When I started at Live Oak, they had me do, as part of my onboarding, I worked in underwriting to underwrite a loan. And I got to underwrite a loan. It was a couple in Texas in their 50s. He was a CVS store manager. She was an accountant. And they dreamed of owning an RV park. That was their thing. And there was one for sale in Pennsylvania. And we financed their acquisition of this RV park in Pennsylvania. And this is like the happiest thing that's ever happened to them. And it was so fulfilling for me. I'm like talking about it years later. I kind of want to go there. But super fulfilling, and finding purpose in your job is just, it's a really important part of what you should be doing. So I feel like I'm getting between you guys and lunch soon. It's always a bad idea. It's your choice what your journey is, how you experience that journey. Push your limits, take some risks, embrace learning, do the hard things, be good, and above all else, attitude and effort. And that's what I got. Thank you.
So tell you what, we have some time for some Q&A. If you'd raise your hand, if you've got a question, just raise your hand. I'll bring the mic to you so everybody can hear your question. So if you've got a question for Stephanie, please raise your, oh, there we have a question.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
Was there ever a time in your career where you remember that you feel like you found your limits, and what was that like, and how did you respond?
That's a great question. So I think sometimes your limits find you too, in terms of what you can and can't do. I mean, a lot of these stories are examples of me finding my limits. Like I decided that day I wasn't going to be a math major, right? That was a hard limit for me. I wasn't going to be a managing director in the M&A group. That was set as a limit for me. And so I shifted and found new places to push and create new limits for myself. I hit a lot of physical limits with work because it was so demanding. And you just got to get out of it what you can. You know, I have, this is a sort of a dark but very funny story. When I had my daughter in 2009, I was committed to getting home by the time she went to bed at 7 o'clock every night. And I was working on a cross-border deal for a company in Switzerland, buying a company in the United States. It's very high stakes, very demanding client. I didn't want to tell anybody I was leaving work so early, because that's what it was to leave work at 6:15. And so I would go home, put Addison to bed. And I don't know if you guys have babysat or have, you know, cousins or siblings that are little, but the lights go down, the soft music or white noise is played, you're sitting in a rocking chair, reading a book. And honestly, minutes later, you're out cold. Like even the most awake person cannot survive putting a child to bed and stay awake. And I was exhausted. I was an exhausted working mother. And so I would fall asleep often on the floor of her room, and wake up totally disoriented at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and panicked, like my heart racing. Nobody could reach me. My client's going to be so mad. And I would break out the laptop and go into the living room and just start working and catching up on things, really panicked. So the funny thing about 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning is that's when they're coming to work in Switzerland. And so I was sending off emails to Switzerland. They were in the office. We could hop on the phone. We could exchange comments. They sent an email after that deal got done. That was ABB's Baldor acquisition. It was a motor company, to the CEO of Citigroup, saying that they'd never worked with somebody as dedicated and hardworking in the life of that big global corporation ever. And I was like, I got 8 hours of sleep every night. You know, like I'm not telling anybody that. That was amazing. So you hit limits, but you can turn them into something else. Yeah.
Who's next? I'll just give the mic to someone and you have to make up a question.
Is there anything you guys just want to hear more about?
Yeah. Lunch isn't that good. Okay, so I played it up a little while ago. Question.
Hi there, Brandon Bryce. I teach economics at the university, and I really enjoyed your chat. You mentioned something that I think was really important for students to hear and everyone beyond, and that is to make sure that you perform well in your classes before taking extra credit and then maybe applying that to your work life afterwards. But you also gave some anecdotes about people that you worked with or things that you did where you went over and beyond and took extra work and didn't shy away from extra challenges. So I'm curious if you could speak to the balance of ensuring that you do a great job at the things that you're intending to do, but then also when you should take some of that extra workload.
Yeah. It's one of the great things about investment banking that I always really liked. I've always said, like, everybody knows themselves and operates differently. I'm the kind of person that if there are clear rules of the game and they're written down, I can win, right? But if you're working in a vague environment where you have to sort that out, that's really hard for me. I don't pick up on all the cues, and I'm not going to just necessarily perform well. Investment banking, the rules are really clear, right? What we're trying to accomplish and the timeline we're trying to accomplish it with the performance that's required. Like, I know what I know what an A looks like, which is part of the challenge of knowing when you can do extra credit. You have to know you're getting the A. And it took me years to get an A before I started getting extra credit in investment banking. And that looked like me learning how to model on sort of a fast pace. It was me learning how to read legal agreements on my own. It was figuring out how to check somebody else's work and find all the mistakes. It was figuring out how to manage up so that I wasn't delivering important materials to the board of directors of Dow Chemical without my boss having seen it first, right? Like, there's a lot of those things that you just, I always called it just learning how to work, learning how to do a job is like the first thing you have to do. And for those of you who do summer internships, you'll figure that out faster. But there's like this, checking your work, being on time, getting it done right, and following the instructions and the asks that you had. Like, doing that with excellence is actually really hard. Doing it okay, not so hard. Kind of like getting, I don't know, I can tell you how Stanford grade, getting a B wasn't that hard. Getting an A, excruciatingly difficult. So that's knowing what an A looks like. And that's something you can ask your boss. You should get real-time feedback and engage in those conversations and know what it looks like. And then when you feel like you're doing it regularly, that's when you ask, and you'll start taking notice. Frankly, if you're working hard enough, you shouldn't even notice all the people around you doing extra credit projects. You should be so busy with your own stuff and getting it done right. That familiar to you?
You mentioned working with people you don't like.
Yeah.
How would you work in an environment where you truly do not get along with your boss?
I'm beginning to complex.
This has nothing to do with any current situations.
Would you
By the
like
way-
to lay down in a chair?
By the way, Rob,
I saw those
am,
hands go up, and I'm like,
I am leaving next week.
okay.
Working hard, being diplomatic, but you truly, and we're all going to have it someday. How do you deal with that?
So giving the person the benefit of the doubt first, you got to get a different role or job or boss, right? Like, if you've really tried everything. I really, unless there are like material value differences, which I think could cause you to want to go work for somebody else and do something else. I really think you should be able to get along with everybody. I had the same person, Stavros, he used to scream at everybody, and I just could not take it. And so he was screaming at me for something once, and I was like, you're obviously have such a high bar for these analytics. Have you thought about maybe you need to do them? Because none of us will live up to this. You could probably, in fact, do it in your head. And he was like, I could definitely do it in my head. And I was like, well, then good. I got to go. sometimes you got to know where the person's coming from and meet them there. And we worked very well together for a long time. And, you know, he could yell at anybody he wanted except for me. And, you know, other people could make people cry, but they weren't allowed to make me cry. Like, I will give people my A+ and my extra credit, but I require respectful relationships, but that leads with me respecting them, right? And so I give a lot of respect to the people I work for and learn from, and it gets us to a place where we work well together. I worked for some of the craziest people at Citigroup, to the point where when we hired a new global head of M&A, he said to me, "Stephanie, who do you do most of your work with?" And I listed 4 people, and he goes, "Whoa, you must be like off the charts on your EQ." And I was like, maybe, but as long as you guys keep paying me well, I'll be okay. Yeah, I think you can get there. And if you really can't, giving that person the benefit of the doubt, like, I think it's okay to leave and just say, you know, I'm not happy in this world, but I like my job, and I can work for someone or with someone and do the same thing in a happier way. Yeah.
So being a woman,
kind of like maintained your assertiveness and decided I need to set my own boundaries? Like, you had mentioned your boss would yell at you and you said he could yell at others, but not me. Like, how did you get to the point where you were confident enough in yourself to be assertive?
So not very helpful, but a little bit, I was born this way. And I get that that's not very helpful. I actually very frustratingly had someone tell me if more women were like me, there'd be more women in investment banking. And I was like, I don't know if that was an insult or a compliment, right? Like, what are you saying? I'm a jerk, you know? I'm balding and male, you know, like, what are you saying? I think you have to stay true to yourself. I think if you're in an aggressive or assertive work environment, you know, that's part of like saying, I know what the rules of this game are, and the rules of this game are to be aggressive and assertive. And I can do that, right? So I also found myself in an environment that I could handle. My extended experience there made me just much more immune to feedback, negative comments, all kinds of things, sometimes in a bad way. You know, when I got the job offer at Live Oak, I said to him, I was like, "You guys, I think this is going to be awesome. But you know, I was in New York a long time, right?" And they said, "That's okay, Steph. We could use a little New York around here." But there are times where I'm like, I'm a lot in New York for this business, you know? We had a company, we had a team discussion, and everybody was talking about how we need to do a better job at giving each other feedback so we can get the best performance out of our team. And then somebody said, "Well, why don't we give each other more feedback?" And then somebody else was like, "It's because we're too nice. Like, nobody wants to hurt each other's feelings. We're all being nice all the time." And then somebody else goes, "No, Stephanie gives us feedback all the time." And I was like, "Did you just call me mean?" And they were like, "No, it's useful, right? You'll call somebody and say, 'I liked this, but next time you do it, you know, here's how you can make it better.' And then I get to make it better because you told me." And so that's the other thing, is that sometimes hard conversations, whether it's feedback or difficult communications, they're actually a very respectful thing to do rather than avoiding hard topics. And that's part of, I guess, maybe that's part of the definition of being assertive, right? Is being comfortable with conflict and having those discussions. And yeah, I grew up in a family where it's like, you know, shouting was speaking, you know, so I was unbelievably comfortable with conflict and with feedback. So I think that's been a big part of it as a woman in the business. It is important to see how you present yourself within a group, male or female, right? Are you confident in your ideas? Are you speaking when you need to be heard? Are you keeping your ideas for after the meeting and not sharing them when you need to? Those are all like business etiquette, politics stuff that's really hard to navigate. And it's really a thing you will learn by admiring the people who do it well. So you pick somebody who everybody knows and listens to when they talk. And you're like, how do I talk more like that person? So Chip Mahan, our CEO, commands an audience every time he talks. And one thing he does really, really well, which you will see I've been trying to work on, is he's a great storyteller. And so he will sometimes kick off meetings and he'll sit back and he speaks very quietly, which is something I will never be able to do, but I admire. And he'll kick off with a story that sort of sets a tone of what we're all trying to accomplish, sort of a vision, gets us all really inspired and excited. And I've been watching him do that. I'm like, I'm gonna tell more stories. I've been so like lead with the facts, get to the answer, give people their alternatives. And just, you know, everyone you work with, there's something to learn. Yeah.
Here we go. I'll give you the mic.
I attended a previous talk with the girl who had just graduated, and she was getting used to going to like a 9 to 5 and like learning that work-life balance. And you do a lot more than it sounds like a 9 to 5. You work at 2 a.m., you have 2 kids, you travel. And I was just wondering if you had a moment of adjustment to post-grad to another 9 to 5 where you were just learning how to deal with that and how to balance life and family and work and like all of it, how to do it all.
Yeah. So I went into consulting out of undergrad, and it was longer than 9 to 5, but it wasn't investment banking. And it was a boutique shop. I think like the big consulting firms are a little bit more like investment banking. But I was away from home every week for that job. And just even that in and of itself was a big part of me learning how to adjust, be more independent, find things to do on my own, create my own routines outside of a school day. So that was really big deal for me. What I found about myself as I pursued other jobs is I wanted that really steep learning curve. Like I wanted to feel the challenge and the rush of doing big, important things with people who are going to teach me a lot. And I felt like I wasn't navigating into those environments and the jobs that I was taking. And so for me, one of the reasons, and I knew investment bankers and I knew what they were doing. I knew they were working 7 days a week and all the time. And so when I chose it as my post-MBA job, I knew what I was getting into. And it's because I was craving something in particular for my career. At the time, I thought I'd go into a finance job on the West Coast. So I thought it would be a temporary amount of pain. But I wanted to make sure I walked out of that career having some very tangible, knowable, quantifiable skills that would create value for me in my career. And so I knew I would get that from investment banking and from M&A. And then I had to make these super hard trade-offs as I decided to stay. And every year, you know, is a decision in that job. You're like, all right, is this year I'm going to leave? Is this year I'm going to leave? Is this year I'm going to leave? And it just depends on how things were going for me. I was not, my husband's great. Like we met in business school. He's always got a 5-year plan, 3 to 5 years. He always knows where he's going to be. I was like, I love it here. I'm going to keep doing this, you know, like if you ask the people at Live Oak around the management team table, we're all like, we're all going to die here. It's going to be great, you know? So really that's a fault of mine. I just get into what I'm doing. I'm a, go deep person. Yeah, for those of you who can, I encourage you to think about, what does what I'm doing now impact my choices later and sort of manage to that.
Well, thank you very much. Those are great questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Katie Avancevich, you have anything to add to that? Okay, thank you. So don't forget, we have lunch. It says on your program, lunch on the lawn. It's actually a parking lot and it's right out back. But we're very good at branding and marketing around here. So enjoy lunch on the lawn.
Hi,
For you.
thank you